Hello everyone, how are we all doing? Now in this video, I am talking about irrational and unhealthy beliefs that I see a lot and how people are holding these beliefs and clinging on to these beliefs and very rigidly holding on to these beliefs, holding them back, stopping them making any progress with shifting their irrational beliefs and their perspectives and seeing why OCD is playing such a big part in their life still. Because OCD takes orders from beliefs. Remember that. I can't highlight that enough. Because if it's just, it's a thought, move on, do your exposure, just change your relationship with anxiety. Okay, yes, important points. If you don't do any belief work, you can't really expect to recover. I'd go as far as saying it's impossible. Because if you're stuck with chronic severe OCD and do no belief work at all, it won't budge. OCD will not budge because it requires a deeper level of acceptance. It requires for you to look at your irrational beliefs, see what's holding you back. Because like I said at the start of this video, OCD is taking orders from beliefs. It's seeing what you're clinging on to. It's seeing where you're very black and white, where you're very all or nothing, where you're very rigid, and it's taking orders from that. Okay, it's going after what you can't accept. It's going after what you're very irrational about. It's going after your demands and your catastrophizing, which we'll get onto. But I want to talk about in this video how us as me as coach or us as coaches here, how we help you identify your irrational beliefs. Yes, it's down to you to identify them as well, but you're going to need guidance, you're going to need assistance, hence why I recommend getting in touch for one-to-one calls. And please email phil@ocdrecovery.com to get in touch if you're really struggling to find where you're getting stuck, what irrational beliefs you're holding, what's holding you back, why you can't make any progress towards shifting beliefs, because we can certainly take a look at that for you and start breaking them down together and chipping away and gradually picking apart our core fears and our irrational beliefs so it just remains a healthy concern but not an absolute catastrophe if our worst case scenario is true. Okay, and we're going to help break that down together. So in this video, I want to talk about what I see the most and how I help identify breaking down beliefs for you, or with you, not for you, with you. Okay, it's very important. Okay, so first of all, the demand. I often ask people, let's look for the demand. What demand are you holding? Okay, it can be very, very subtle, or it can also be very, very obvious, and it could be sort of hitting you in the face how you're holding such a demand, but identifying it and uprooting it can be a lot rarer. Okay, so the demand. So this can be a must, an absolute should, an ought, a need, a have to, a got to, a must to. I've got to do this. I need to achieve that. I just cannot do wrong. I must not have done wrong. I must not lose my job. I cannot be stuck with OCD forever. I need it gone. They ought to not treat me like that. I have to now leave my partner if this happens. If they do this, I have to then leave them. That very, very rigid demand you're holding, very black and white, and demands get people into a lot of emotional trouble. Instead, we're going to shift that to a flexible preference, a more healthy desire. So you can strive for something, but never needing to achieve something. You want something, but you never have to have something. Okay, you never need something. Okay, because when we say need, I would say need and musts are the most common things I hear. I need this in order for this. I need to get this in order for me to be happy. I need OCD gone in order for me to live my life. I need to know for sure whether I'm this or whether I've done that or whether these thoughts are going to go. I need this in order for me to recover. No, okay? The need is the problem. In order for me to be happy and for me to enjoy life, I need to know for sure, for example, with HOCD, my sexuality. I need to know for sure who I'm attracted to. I have to know. Well, no, because you are chasing certainty there, and because OCD is a doubting disorder, any slight 0.0000001% uncertainty, it's going to latch to that, it's going to cling to that, and off down the rabbit hole you go of trying to work it out, trying to figure out because you are desperate to get certainty. Okay, so it all stems from that need. I must know whether I have done wrong in the past. I have to know. I need to know whether I will be stuck forever. If I don't know that, then I just can't enjoy life. I can't possibly live with the uncertainty. It is the worst thing ever, and so on. Okay, so just be very, very wary of the needs, the musts, the shoulds, the oughts, the have-tos, the got-tos. They fuel a lot of emotional disturbance. So what we're going to do is take a look at them, rip them apart, and change them more to rational beliefs and dispute them as well. Okay? Because what I'll ask you is that Your irrational demand, where is the evidence to support that? How can we support that you must not have done wrong? Okay, where can we support that you have to recover? How can that be proven? Where is the evidence to support that? Okay, if there was evidence, then you're implying that there is some universal law stating that because you want to recover, then you will recover. And because you have to recover, then it automatically will happen. Well, that's not the case, because you're not owed anything. You're not entitled to anything. There is no universal deservingness. So just because you want something, you have to get it. That doesn't exist, right? You can strive for something your whole life, but there's still nothing that suggests that you need to then have it. Okay, people can build a business for years and years and years, work their ass off trying to achieve something, and that can all come crumbling down overnight. Okay, so just because you want something, just because you've worked hard for something, there is still no universal guarantee that you will get it. Okay, I'll give you an example of this, and this triggers a lot of people. Just because you work hard at recovery and are very committed to it, there is no guarantee that you will recover, right? People don't like hearing that. But when people cling on to the guarantee that they'll recover just because they're reading all the books and doing the disputing, doesn't mean you're then going to recover. That's just reality, okay? Because there's always an element of uncertainty there, okay? So what we got to do is really break down of why you can't prove the irrational demand, okay? I need to know. Well, why do you need to know? If you needed to know, then you drop dead without knowing. Because in the way I use the word need, in the sense of the rational word need, the only thing that you need to survive and stay alive is food, water, and shelter. Everything else is just a luxury. Everything else is just a bonus, just an incentive, right? You don't need the fancy car. You don't need X amount of money, right? You don't need a relationship. You don't need OCD gone, right? Because you can survive and you can even be happy and enjoy life even without those things. Yes, of course, those things help. Of course, money would help. Of course, a nice car would help. A nice career, a good career, a relationship. They can all add to your life, but they don't make your life, okay? The need, the word need, in the basic sense of the word and the most rational sense of the word, is just survival and staying alive. So food, water, and shelter, you do very well to survive without those things, okay? So we'll break down those demands. The next thing I see is the catastrophizing, the awfulizing, the horribilizing, the terribilizing. Oh, this is terrible if I've done this. That is the worst thing ever. If I'm stuck with OCD for the rest of my life, that is the worst possible thing ever. An absolute catastrophe. Absolutely awful. It's terrible if I've done this. It's horrible not knowing. Right? If I'm stuck with OCD, it's totally and utterly awful. If I die prematurely, health OCD, then that is just the worst possible thing ever. I just could not cope with that. Absolutely terrible. Okay? Be very wary how you're stating those things. Because when you state it's awful, it's terrible, it's horrible, it's a catastrophe, you are stating that it is more than bad. That is 120% bad. That is the worst thing ever. That it could not be worse. That is the worst possible thing on this planet. That is not true. Even in the most difficult circumstances, if you look for it, there'll be something that you could class as worse, or a lot worse off than you, or bad, more bad than your situation, okay? Because it's all perception. It's all how you're viewing it, okay? In one-to-one calls, I often give you analogies. I give you comparisons, meaning I'll go to the extreme, for example, imagine this situation, imagine that situation, okay? Now tell me if your situation is really the worst thing ever. I'm not downplaying your situation. I'm not saying it's easy. I'm not saying it's not an issue, not at all. But when we say it's awful, we are really implying there is nothing else worse, that it's more than bad, okay? Instead, I want you to shift that to is just a damn nuisance. It's an inconvenience. It's unfortunate. It's a frustration. It's a very, very big annoyance. Okay, it's unpleasant, right? It might be very, very unpleasant. It might be very, very bad. But saying it's totally awful, the worst thing ever, is making the problem 10 times worse. Okay, let's say something goes wrong in your life. If you are defining that as awful, if you're describing that as terrible, as the worst thing ever, you then have the emotional problem about the practical problem. Let's say you lost your job. Okay, you lose your job and you say, for fuck's sake, losing my job is just the worst thing ever. How could I have done that? That's terrible, absolute terrible, awful, a catastrophe. Well, rather than focus on getting a new job, trying to even get a better paid job, maybe starting a new career, rather than maybe trying to stay in that job. Let's say, for example, you were close to getting fired, for example, rather than improving your efficiency or talking to your boss or whatever, because you are catastrophizing this, you are making the practical problem a lot more difficult to deal with because of the emotional problem, which is going to fuel the depression, the guilt, the panic, the anger, the rage, the anxiety. Okay, so you then have an emotional problem because you're catastrophizing about the practical problem. Okay, when you work on the emotional problem and change it just to a healthy desire, a healthy preference, an anti-catastrophe, an anti-awfulizing approach, meaning you're just saying it's a damn bloody nuisance. It's a very big frustration if I lose my job. It's a damn inconvenience if I lose my job, with no income, with the change of career, with the out of job. Yes, it's a huge inconvenience. But as soon as you then label it as the worst thing ever, total catastrophe, awful, horrible, terrible, you're making it 10 times worse and you're giving yourself an even bigger mountain to climb. Okay, so what we do in one-to-one calls, we bring that down. So when there is a practical problem in your life, OCD is a practical problem, right? Because you don't like how you feel, right? It's holding you back in many areas of your life. But when you're then getting depressed about being depressed, anxious about being anxious, guilty about being guilty, angry about being, or about suffering of OCD, right? You then have a emotional problem about the practical problem which you're trying to solve anyway. Okay, so just be very wary of how you're awfulizing stuff, how you're terribilizing stuff, how you're catastrophizing stuff, because it holds so many people back. Okay, very, very important. The first book on our reading list, How to Stubbornly Refuse to Make Yourself Miserable at Anything, Yes, Anything by Albert Ellis, covers that in great detail. If you haven't read that already, I recommend reading it. The next thing I see, and I see this all the time, not just with OCD, in all areas of people's lives, low frustration tolerance. That is probably the biggest thing that holds people back from achieving their goals or overcoming some emotional disturbance or any difficulty, any problem in their life, any adversity. It's the low frustration tolerance. I can't stand it. I just can't bear it anymore. This is unbearable. This is the worst thing ever. I cannot cope with this. If I'm stuck with OCD for the rest of my life, I just cannot stand it. I cannot stand them treating me like that. It is unbearable. If I lose my job, it is totally unbearable. Me not knowing, me not having certainty is the worst thing ever. I just cannot cope with the consequences of that. Okay? This can be applied to everything. I'm not going to come on this video and give examples for every theme. Okay, this is what we'll break down in one-to-one calls, because one-to-one calls are specialised to your specific fears and what's holding you back. No matter how taboo, no matter how strange, no matter how unusual, no matter if you feel like you're the exception, no matter if you feel like yours is different, we'll still look at your low frustration tolerance and how your beliefs and you saying, I can't stand it, I can't bear it, I cannot cope, how that is holding you back from overcoming your problem. Okay? Instead, we're going to build frustration tolerance, a higher frustration tolerance, okay, which takes time. I will ask you, can you really not stand it? You tell me, can you really not stand that thing? Okay? And we'll change it to a more rational belief that I really don't like this. It's a damn nuisance. It's very unfortunate, but I can stand it. Even if I can't stand it very well, I can stand it. Because as long as you're alive, you're breathing, you can stand it. Even if you are really, really struggling, you can stand it. Because as soon as you say, I can't stand it, I can't bear it, you are shutting the door on overcoming the problem. And you are making it 20 times harder to overcome it. Because rather than saying it's just a bloody nuisance and it's going to be difficult to overcome it, but you can still stand it and try to stand it as much as you can, as soon as you then step the line and say, well, I can't stand it, it's terrible, I can't cope, the worst thing ever, then you're making it very, very hard to actually overcome the problem. Okay? So building frustration tolerance is very, very important. Okay. Next one. This is a very common one. This was something that I did very, very often. I did this a lot, very, very subtly as well, not knowing at times. Look for the neverness and the alwaysness. Okay? So I can never get a good job again. Let's say you just lost your job. I can never get a good job again just because you've lost a job. Well, hang on a minute. You're stating that just because you failed at this one job, just because you've been fired for this one job, you're then writing off any future job, any future career, any future promotion, any future career avenue. Doesn't make much sense to me. Okay, but we often do it as humans. We tend to say, well, because of this, I'll never do well again. Oh, this person left me, I'll never get a good relationship again. Oh, because I've had a setback, I will never feel good again. Right? Amount of times I hear that one all the time. Sam, I've had a shit time of it recently. I will never ever feel good again. That neverness is very black and white. Okay? Even if you're having a bad day today, doesn't mean you can never have a good day in the future. Right? It often feels like that because it feels so intense. It feels so real. OCD magnifies that. Right? Of course it does. It magnifies when you're having a bad day. Oh my God, I'll never feel any good again. I'm always going to be stuck like this, and so on. Okay? So be very wary of how you're saying never all the time. The neverness. Okay? And the alwaysness. I am always doomed to fail. I am always going to be stuck. I will always be stuck with OCD forever. I will always be stuck. Okay? Look for that. Because you're not just saying, I'm stuck today on the 21st of June when I'm recording this video. You're saying that you're going to be stuck for every day for the rest of your life. I know it feels like that, but that's not rational because that can't be proven. Because where's the evidence to say you will be stuck? You have to get used to you might be, but saying I always will be stuck is then just giving yourself a mountain to climb once again. Because then you're convincing yourself that you will never get better, making it 10 times harder to actually get better. Okay? If your partner leaves you, you are saying, I will always be no good in a relationship. Let's say you made a mistake. Let's say you cheated on your partner. Let's say you treated them quite unfairly, right? And you say, well, because I did this, that means I'm always going to treat them badly. Well, hang on a minute. Hang on. Just because you treated someone badly once, yes, there may be a tendency there, but saying I will always treat them badly is saying that a human can never change, that a human can never learn from their mistakes, that a human can never see what they did wrong, acknowledge it, and look to change their behaviour. Saying they will always do the same thing is shutting the door on any human ever changing, which isn't true because humans change all the time. We're an ever-changing process. That's what we are. Okay? We're constantly changing. Experiences, belief changes, perspective changes, things that we go through, suffering, struggle, any ailment, any disease, anything that happens to us, any adversity changes us. Even just 80 minutes I've been speaking to you, something would have changed because I'm ever changing, right? So look at how we're holding rigidly that neverness and alwaysness. That gets us into a lot of trouble. I will never get better. Hang on a minute. You might be struggling today, but saying you will never get better is very extreme. It's very black and white. It's very catastrophic. It's going from 0 to 100. We're gradually going to bring that down, which is what we were doing one-to-one calls. Okay? Let's look for your self-downing. This is a big one. I am bad. I am worthless. I am no good. I am horrible. I am evil. I've done this one thing, so I am bad. Okay, we got to go towards self-acceptance. How we can accept ourselves unconditionally, even if we have done this one act, even if we have done 10 acts, even if we have done this bad thing. Okay, accepting ourselves even with our slip-ups and our relapses and our setbacks with OCD. Okay, the reason I'm covering this a lot because fear is a big one. People constantly come in and say, I fear being stuck with OCD forever. So we've really got to break this down and pick it apart, which is what we do a lot on these one-to-one calls. Okay, so you're self-downing, constantly beating yourself up, the self-berating, a big, big problem. I'm bad, I'm worthless, I'm no good, I'm hopeless, I'm a waste of time. What's the point? Very extreme, very black and white. Other downing, with feelings of anger and rage, a big one. Like jealousy is also a big one. He is bad. She is worthless. He is wrong. She is not good about that because she said this. She must not have that belief. That makes her a bad person. That makes him no good. That makes him evil. The lack of unconditional other acceptance. Okay, accepting others even when you disagree with their actions. You can strongly condemn someone's actions, of course, okay? But as soon as you then down that person, as soon as you then do some other downing, you are then shutting the door on any compassion, any acceptance, any empathy, any understanding. And then if we can't accept others, we find accepting ourselves extremely difficult, okay? So when you're feeling feelings of anger and rage and pity towards others and vengefulness and so on, look at your other downing, how you're downing them, okay? You separate the action from the individual, the sin from the sinner. Okay, so you can strongly condemn one's behaviour, but as soon as you condemn them as a person, you're then going to fuel the feelings of anger and rage by saying, well, they are bad because they've done this. They must not have done that. They must not have treated me unfairly. That makes them bad. They deserve to be punished. Okay, that's what fuels the feelings of anger and rage and so on. Okay, life downing is a very big one. Life isn't worthwhile. What's the point? Life is meaningless. If I've done this thing in the past, I can't enjoy life. Life is done, finished, waste of time. What's the point? Totally meaningless. Nothing matters, right? That downing life, okay? Instead, we're going to go towards life acceptance. Accepting life with all kinds of conditions. Not liking conditions, not liking circumstances, and doing all you can to change those conditions. But having the wisdom to know the difference between what you can change and what you can't change, and the things that you cannot change, accepting. Going towards acceptance, but just not liking them. Okay? Because we often say about cruel and harsh conditions, oh, because of this thing in my life, my whole life is bad. Because I am suffering with OCD, my whole life is suffering. Okay, well, no, you're just suffering with OCD. OCD isn't your whole life. Okay, yes, it affects your whole life, but it doesn't disturb your whole life, only if you let it. Okay, it's like saying, well, if this happens to me, so let's say, for example, you're living in a very, in a poor area, okay? And let's say there's lots of poverty near you. Now, of course, that part of your life is very, very bad, and that affects your life, okay? But if you're saying it rates your whole life, my whole life is totally bad because of this one thing, then you're downing your whole of life, okay? Let's say you were treated unfairly, and let's say you lost your job, okay? So your career is not good at the moment, and that's being worked on. But saying your whole life is bad because of your career, it doesn't really make much sense. Same as a relationship. If you're having relationship issues, or OCD is latched to ROCD, or let's say someone's just left you in a relationship, you then say, well, my whole life is bad because my relationship hasn't worked out. That doesn't make much sense. Okay, because what about all the other things? What about your social life? What about your hobbies and your interests and your career and your exercise and your reading your books and all the things that you enjoy? What about all that? You can't just define your whole life on one thing going wrong, on one adversity, on one circumstance, on one condition. Okay, so be very wary of how we're downing our whole life. Life isn't worthwhile, meaningless. What's the point? If I've done this one thing, my whole life is written off. Hang on a minute. Just doing this one thing in the past doesn't write your whole life off, only if you say your whole life's written off. Okay, very, very important. And we see that a lot. And we break that down in one-to-one calls. The final thing I wanted to cover with you, this is a very, very big one. The undeservingness. I hear this all the time. I used to say it all the time. I'm undeserving. If I do wrong, I deserve to be punished, or I am undeserving of any joy, of any happiness. I do not deserve to be let off the hook. I deserve to be severely guilty for the rest of my life. I don't deserve any happiness. And that was the big one for me, the undeservingness. You know, everything just felt like, well, I don't deserve that. If only you knew, you wouldn't be talking to me, you wouldn't be dating me, you wouldn't be going on holiday with me, you wouldn't be coming to the football match with me, you wouldn't be coming to this music concert with me, you wouldn't be employing me, right? Because it was that constant undeservingness of myself. I don't deserve this because of that. Because I had this intrusive thought yesterday, I don't deserve your liking, your love, your care, respect, just constant undeservingness. We have to disprove that. We have to look at how universal deservingness or undeservingness doesn't exist. Okay? If it existed, then wars wouldn't happen, then genocide wouldn't happen, then children wouldn't die of cancer, then there wouldn't be natural disasters. People wouldn't just suddenly be unjustly killed by something random that happens. Maybe, like I said, a natural disaster. Maybe they're just walking along the street, someone falls asleep at the wheel as they're driving and knocks them over and kills them. Well, they didn't deserve that. but there is no universal deservingness. When we cling on to that, we then get ourselves into a lot of emotional trouble, because then we say, yeah, but they deserve to be punished. I deserve to be punished. I didn't deserve that. They didn't deserve that. Okay, gets us into a lot of trouble. We've got to really break down the undeservingness, okay, because it's not very rational at all. And you've got to also break down, well, why am I owed anything, right? Because it also links into the entitlement. Or just because this, I'm entitled to that. Well, hang on a minute, who's stating that? Where is the universal law that states that? Okay, and it also plays into the victimizing. Why me, why me, why me? Well, why not you? Why do you deserve not to have OCD? Why do you deserve not to suffer or struggle mentally? Okay, you don't want to struggle, of course you don't. You don't want to suffer. But when you cling on to deservingness, they deserve this, I don't deserve that, I'm undeserving of this, they're undeserving of that, you get into a lot of emotional trouble. Okay, so we have to rip that apart, because that holds so many people back, clinging on to the undeservingness concept. I see it all the time. It holds so many people back, and it keeps many people stuck in the OCD and the compulsive cycle, and just the self-damning, the self-sabotaging cycle, the self-destructive cycle, that constant undeservingness all the time. Nothing else matters. What's the point? I don't deserve to be happy. I'm undeserving of any enjoyment in my life. I see it all the time, and something that I struggled with massively. I'm now over that because I'm recovered. I can certainly help guide you through that. So if you're interested in one-to-one services, please email phil@ocdrecovery.com. I hope you found this video helpful. If you have, please leave a like and subscribe to the channel if you haven't already to stay up to date with free content that we provide. We cover most topics on this channel, all the different topics and the nuances and intricacies of OCD. It's all covered on this channel in great detail. So yeah, thanks for watching, and we'll speak again. Bye-bye.